Okay, you're on.
Hi everyone. Welcome to one of this webinar that we organized on this Thursday morning. Thank you for coming in. And so this webinar, we organized this together with Veritas to talk about some cyber security and like how you can protect your mission critical data in your corporate environment. So on the Veritas side, we have Hajit to present, and also on the Veritas Backup Exec and some of the new features and how you can protect from, like, for example, ransomware, how you can simplify automated protection, and how you scale up backup directly to cloud, and also unifying all your different backups together. And on the other hand, and because we're also talking about protection of data, we have Luis from Chess Asia, and to talk about how you can secure your identity on cloud, and he'll be sharing with you identity access management, and also how you can implement multi-factor authentication, MFA. Yeah, so we have our first presenter, we'll be sharing. Can you share the presentation?
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Leon, for the introduction. Hope everyone's staying safe amidst this pandemic situation right now. So as Leon mentioned, we have a packed session today. We would like to quickly share some new information, specifically in terms of protecting your workload, your mission critical data. So I'll be taking on the first session. My name is Mujahid. I'm from Veritas. Basically, I'm a technical consultant at Veritas, covering the Singapore commercials as well as the channels business. Before we dive deep into the session, I would like to quickly start off with a simple poll. Appreciate if everybody can participate to give in your thoughts or your inputs on the same. So here goes the first poll before we get into the contents of the slides. Right. Okay. So poll number one. Question number one is, are you using any public cloud today? You can give me your comments on that, please. And then following up is question number two is, which public cloud provider are you using today? Okay. So thank you for the input. Let's quickly see how the results look like. Okay, so most of you are using, well, everybody who participated in the poll are on Azure. Fantastic. Thank you very much for the input. So let's begin with the slides today, or the contents today. Okay. So first and foremost, how do you go about protecting your mission critical data in today's time? Specifically, the challenge number one that we're looking at is increasing cost, right? So as you may already been experiencing, right, all of a sudden from the last 2-3 months, we've been doing a lot of work, a lot of new things, projects that were already on the pipeline had to be put on hold, and new initiatives had to be brought up simply to continue the business running. And amidst that, there is a lot of new things that has to be looked into, things like collaboration, having something like Teams, or, having a simple messaging platform, even empowering users to work from home, etc., etc. And of course, all of this, while all of these are happening, right, something important happens at the back end is the data itself. Now, because everybody is working out from home, that means, we're not sacrificing or foregoing our work. We're still continuing to do it. And of course, we're continuing to do it at a much more aggressive or higher pace. So having said that, your storage consumption, your data generation is increasing, which reflects on your costs of managing the data, and of course, hosting the data in your infrastructure. Next, as a result of all of these new ways of working, whereby we are exposing our platforms to be able to empower our users for working from home to do their task or to do their job. Of course, the security that we had in tight are kind of loosening up to be able to accommodate that workload. So, essentially what's happening is there's threats that is actually spiking up. So things like ransomware, malware getting into the systems for those machines that are not properly protected, or for that matter, your home infrastructure not necessarily needs to have the sophisticated security that your officers might have today. And of course, in terms of regulations, as we are in today's time, regulations are of course of utmost importance. Things like GDPR, PDPA, ensuring how the data collected is being managed, is governed. So rise of regulations and threat is another challenge that is being posed to us in the lights of managing or protecting our data. And then lastly, we're talking about technology landscape, evolving landscape. My question started off with cloud. So that's actually an evolution in terms of your infrastructure. We started off from physical servers, virtual machines came about, and then now we're leveraging on something called the cloud that actually brings in much more benefits to our business and how we do things, how we do things differently. So in the light of these challenges, how do we go about addressing them? Or how do we go around them? In terms of increasing cost, first and foremost, we look at how do we simplify or reduce your complexity. Oops, sorry, that's a bit of fast clicking. So when you reduce complexity in what you do, you essentially reduce the cost. If you have multiple things to manage, if you have multiple platforms that you need to govern in terms of protecting your data, that is essentially adding cost to the whole operation. Number one, you need resources, manpower to manage it. Number two, you need technologies that works across multiple platforms to be able to offer data protection likewise. Next, in terms of rising threats and regulations, right? Essentially, we're looking at managing the risk itself. So at the moment you have complete visibility of your data, irrespective of where it is, you are able to better control or better manage the risks that can come about that. And then in terms of evolving landscape, technology improvements, you need something that is future-proof, that's prepared for the future, that can continue your journey as you go forward, as you adopt new technology. You can simply continue to move your operations likewise. So having all of this in mind, what we want to propose to you is a very simple solution, a secured solution, and of course a unified solution, which is Backup Exec. So Backup Exec is a data protection solution that works across multiple platforms, virtual, physical, and cloud, and essentially offers you something simple, secure, and unified. At the heart of Backup Exec, you have your Backup Exec server that talks to all of your workloads in the organization. Maybe Microsoft workloads, something like SQL, Exchange, SharePoint, or even Linux workloads like Red Hat, SUSE Linux, etc. And from a virtualization perspective, we support today VMware and Hyper-V. For those customers who are leveraging on those respective technologies, we basically can extend our protection to those platforms as well. So essentially being able to centrally manage, across multiple flavors of applications and platforms reduces the complexity to you. And as a result, you are able to drive your cost lower and then achieve benefits to the organization. And being able to extend controls or protection to remote offices, as most of you might have multiple offices spanned across in individual countries or across countries, you need to still provide data protection accordingly. So we are able to extend those coverages as well. And of course, from a technology perspective, as I mentioned, cloud is something that's picking up. Backup Exec is very nicely fitted to work in those platforms as well. So backup whatever is on the cloud, or essentially backup through the cloud, are some of the use cases that our customers are evaluating and going ahead deploying using Backup Exec. So as of today, Backup Exec is on version 21. So if any of you customers out there are existing Backup Exec customers and not on version 21, I kindly urge you to plan your migrations accordingly or plan the upgrades accordingly and move up to the newer version to benefit all the features that we'll be talking in this session today. So next, let's look at, how does Backup Exec help in terms of reducing complexity and the cost. Number one, in terms of software maintenance, being able to give our customers the flexibility of licensing is number one factor in terms of maintaining a lower cost of ownership. So today, Backup Exec has multiple licensing methodologies compared to what we had in the past. So it very well fits customers' requirement, customers' needs, and customers' budgets, ranging from traditional licenses whereby you pick and choose agents and options to capacity-based licenses, or even virtual-based licenses if you're a purely virtual environment. Next, we talk about minimizing your infrastructure CapEx expenditure. So being able to leverage on flexible storage targets, and of course leveraging on things like deduplication, you're essentially able to drive your cost of storage lower. When I talk about storage, I'm talking about backup storage, the storage that is required to hold your backup. And leveraging on technologies like deduplication, which is global across the whole Backup Exec solution. It could be across multiple systems. It could be on-premises. It could be virtual. It could be cloud. Doesn't matter. Backup Exec offers something called global deduplication. So it understands organization as an overall and figures out what needs to be kept in the deduplication store and what can be ignored as a result of duplicate data. So all of these factors, essentially drive in terms of helping customers to minimize their CapEx expenditure. And then lastly, we talk about streamlining the whole operations, rather having point solutions, whereby one you have for physical machine, one for cloud protection, another one for virtual protection. This is adding complexity. So the whole idea of this slide is, to help you uncover how Backup Exec can simplify it by basically unifying all of these workloads into one single console. So all you do is just log on to one single console and extend your protection requirement to all these three platforms that we spoke earlier. So what we've seen is, Backup Exec effectively able to help our customers to drive low their TCO by up to 50%. So that's actually a very big saving in terms of your spending power. And in terms of deploying, Backup Exec supports across the board, physical hardware on premises. It could support virtual platforms or virtual hardware. So in order to deploy the solution, you do not need to buy additional hardware. If you have sufficient resources on your virtual infrastructure, you can just spin up a virtual machine and then start protecting your workloads. Likewise on the cloud as well. So today we sit on multiple clouds out there, and then we're certified to run on those cloud providers as well. Essentially, people like Azure, who most of you have, replied on the polling that you are using today. So we are on Azure, we are certified on Azure, and of course we are on the Azure Marketplace as well for you to single click deploy. So, you have multiple options, multiple flavors of how you can leverage on Backup Exec to essentially provide you data protection. Next, let's look at, how Backup Exec helps to manage business risk. Number one, achieving zero downtime. So being able to, orchestrate application recovery from on-premises to cloud, which is, of course, today a lot of customers are looking at, to leverage on cloud as a mean of disaster recovery. You are able to have minimal disruption to business, or rather non-disruptive business operations. By being able to do continuously rehearsals at the snap of a button, you are able to experience how well you can fail over in the event an actual disaster happens. So by doing that operation, on a regular basis, or rather what we call a non-disruptive recovery rehearsal on a regular basis, you can, very well judge or gauge how resilient is your business. And all of this is possible within the Backup Exec software itself. Next, in terms of securing against threats. So ransomware, is very much aggressive in today's time, especially in this pandemic situation. It is quite sad to hear that as well. I mean, attackers are not slowing down. In fact, they're aggressing their pace. So this is an ideal time when people are in a dilemma of their own safety, their health, their family's health. Likewise, this is the best time for attackers to move or corner innocent victims into trouble. So if that happens, what's the recovery mechanism? And this is where Backup Exec really helps our customers to stand against ransomware in the event, or in the unfortunate event there is an impact or an outbreak. there's going to be a clean, secure copy that customers can leverage to recover and restore operations. We'll talk a little more detail in a future slide. So I'm just going to go to the next point, which is two-factor authentication. So in terms of making sure who plays around with the backup solution, we are able to leverage on two-factor authentication to ensure that not just username password is what is required. You also need to have a second factor to authorize you to start working on the backup solution. So this gives additional security control in terms of who gets to play around with the company's critical data. Then moving in towards compliance and regulations, especially the things like today, GDPR, that's actually allowed out there. Being able to essentially identify that kind of data and blocking it from coming into production environment is a key requirement from a backup perspective. Of course, there are other solutions. In fact, we do also have other solutions in the light of helping customers to discover data in the organization that are GDPR context and then do necessary actions. What we've essentially brought into Backup Exec is to be able to identify that data that is already on your backup repository, which has been backed up in the past, and prevent it from coming back onto your production environment. So not only frontline servers are clean, even when you do a restore in the future, you ensure that GDPR related data doesn't come back online and then put organizations into a situation whereby you can get penalized. Next, in terms of data loss, being able to replicate your data from your production site to an offsite is something that a lot of customers are looking at today, especially with the 3-to-1 strategy, whereby organizations are embracing in terms of reviving from ransomware. So 3-to-1 is a very simple backup strategy: 3 backup copies, 2 different media, and 1 offsite. So this is the standard rule a lot of organizations are embracing or following today. So Backup Exec is clearly in a position to help customers to enforce that 3-to-1 rule. So you can have 3 different copies on 2 different media, and of course you can use the offsite replication capability to seamlessly replicate the backup copy to a different location. It could be an on-premises location of your organization, or it could be even to the cloud. And then in terms of cloud recovery, we brought in something called Instant Cloud Recovery, an amazing technology built together with Microsoft Azure, leveraging on Azure Site Recovery. Using Backup Exec solution, now you are able to not just do backup, but also perform replication of your virtual machines to Azure Site Recovery. And then using Backup Exec as a media to control, you can do failover and you can do replication, you can do monitoring, etc. So essentially, enabling you to orchestrate your recovery and then move your workloads with minimal disruption in the event, in the unfortunate event there is some sort of an outage on premises. Next, we talk about recovering virtual machines. So back in the past, recovering virtual machines is a 2-step process. You recover the backup image to a staging location, and then from there you bring it up. Now what we've done is basically empower instant recovery capability to directly stream the backup image from the Backup Exec solution itself. So thereby saving time for the customer to bring up virtual machines that are already on the backup, and avoiding unnecessary storage resources required to do staging and to bring the virtual machine up. So you're looking at a few minutes of time spent to bring virtual machine up to perform maybe a recovery or to do some sort of testing or some sort of compliance check, as compared to previously where you probably spend a few hours to first complete a recovery to a staging location and then bring the virtual machine up. So we basically are in a position to help customers assure that they can recover from a ransomware incident if it was unfortunate to happen. Okay, so let me just quickly put up the second poll which I have to understand a bit more how ransomware is relevant to the audience in this session today. So here we go. The poll starts now. Appreciate if you can give me your input on that. Okay, so those of who replied to the poll, so yes, it's a concern. That's fantastic. Now let's look into the details as we go forward in the slides. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the poll results. Let's go on to the next slide. So next, we're talking about how you prepare yourself for the future. As I mentioned, technology is evolving, new ways of doing things coming up. We also need to follow the same trend or fashion, and empower our customers to continue the evolution growth. So with regards to virtual workloads, we are able to help customers to automatically discover virtual machines that are being created. So virtual machines is like bunnies, it just pops up very dynamically. So you don't want basically to be sitting on your admin backup console to ensure every single virtual machine that is being created by your virtual admin to be protected. Instead, Backup Exec has a mechanism to automatically scan your virtual environment, find any new virtual machine that was created that is not part of the current backup job, and automatically start protecting it. So that's essentially saving a lot of time for the backup administrator, and of course, saving the business from potential risk in the future, figuring out, oh, I haven't backed up this virtual machine. In terms of backing up the virtual machine, since there's going to be a lot of repetitive information on virtual machines, we basically brought in something called a forever incremental capability on the solution to speed up the backup operations itself. So now you're able to back up your virtual infrastructure much faster compared to how it was in the previous version of Backup Exec, so that you are able to finish your backup jobs quicker. So being able to do your backup jobs quicker means you have more time if you want to run multiple backup jobs. So being able to run multiple backup jobs means your recovery point objective is also much more stringent and much more closer to any incident happening. And then from recovery perspective, not requiring to recover the entire virtual machine just to find a single file. It's not like jumping into a haystack to find the needle kind of a story, whereby you can just zoom into your virtual machine backup and then pick that individual file, pick that individual needle, and then recover it. You don't need to restore the entire virtual machine to perform that. It could be a file, it could be an email, it could be a content that's part of your SharePoint, whatever it is. We are able to offer granular recovery. And we, of course, saw instant recovery on the previous slide, being able to instantly bring up virtual machines as and when the need arises, and completely avoiding doing a staging recovery. In terms of cloud adoption, so that's another interesting area a lot of customers of us are looking into, being able to leverage on cloud in some form of manner. So since most of you on this session today replied that you have cloud and of course Azure being part of it, that's great. I'm not sure what you're using the cloud for today. Probably I should have had it as a question maybe next time. So if you're using it at a production environment, fantastic. Backup Exec can sit on the cloud as well to protect those workloads. But if you do not have anything today, if you do not have cloud, or maybe you're looking at maybe how can I look at starting cloud? So backing up the cloud is a good step to take, because data that's on the cloud has no meaning to anybody, because only Backup Exec that's on premises can actually read that data or even make sense of that data. So Backup Exec today can help you to back up your infrastructure and then back up in an intelligent manner to the cloud, leveraging on storages from Azure or AWS or from Google, for which you pay on a utilization basis, and then completely avoid paying upfront capital expenditure on expensive storage devices or taped infrastructure. You can leverage on cloud to store data and then keep there for the longest time that is required. So essentially looking at archiving onto the cloud. And of course, keeping backup copies on the cloud gives you an immediate advantage or a positive play, being able to do disaster recovery if at all required. So those backup images that have been on the cloud can of course be spun up on the cloud or recovered on the cloud, and then you can bring up your instances on the cloud to in the event there is an unfortunate situation or some sort of outage in your primary data center. Next, we look at your SaaS workloads. So SaaS workloads, essentially things like O365, G Suite, Salesforce, of course today talk of the town. A lot of people are moving from on-prem Exchange to O365 Exchange Online, and leveraging on all of the tools and productivity capabilities available with those. Now, moving to that is interesting. Moving to that is, of course, needed or required. But of course, from a data protection perspective, these service providers don't provide data protection. Sadly to say that. These providers provide you a service level for uptime and ensuring that their services are accessible and available. So what we're doing here is to make sure customers complete the whole migration to O365 by being able to protect the data that's on O365 also. So what we're doing here is backing up the data that's on O365 to a separate infrastructure, so that is completely a second copy out of Microsoft infrastructure, and being able to monitor it from Backup Exec itself. So Backup Exec being able to integrate reporting, you are able to see from one single console end to end, your on-premises workload, your cloud workload, which is infrastructure as a service, of course, your SaaS workloads as well, things like O365. So this is how Backup Exec helps you to prepare for your future and give you the thing to live on the edge while we got your back, So let's quickly dive into the features of Backup Exec. Number one, so the new feature that we released is the accelerator. That's giving continuous backup in an incremental manner. Of course, we do support the newer version of vSphere. And of course, we are proud again here to announce that we are the first provider of backup solution out there to support vSphere officially. And then in terms of ransomware resilience, giving you that additional protection required for your backup storage is how we help our customers to withstand an unfortunate ransomware incident. Okay, spending a little bit more time on this particular point. So ransomware is about, getting into your infrastructure, or malware coming into the infrastructure and encrypting the data and making it useless or non-usable. So, and when that happens, you need to pay a ransom to the person who infected you to be able to uncover the data. Now, most of the time, you pay the ransom, you probably be able to recover is a question mark. Only a few percentage was successful in doing that. A large percentage was not. Now, this is more happening on the production environment, or rather the production line servers, we call it. The newest strategy is for attackers is to go behind the backup solution first. Why I say this is because what attackers found out is, the people who responded to ransomware incident was a bit less, or rather was diminishing, because people started using backup solutions to protect the data. And if in the event there was a ransomware, they just look at the backup copy and then restore and then get back to operation. So this was not an essential or an effective business for ransomware attackers. So what they thought was, okay, let's change our strategy. Let's go for the backup solution first. Let's break it down first. Let's corrupt the backup images first. Then we go to the production systems. Then, of course, you have a clear situation where you have your data at risk. You have your data corrupted or encrypted. And then now you are in a situation where you need to pay the ransom. So what we've done in this solution is to protect the data that's already on the backup solution. So Backup Exec has a defending mechanism to prevent any unauthorized people or user or any process for that matter trying to tamper the backup images. So this is a shield against outside and the backup images, preventing any unauthorized users, any unauthorized processors to be able to make changes or corrupt the data. So some of you might have this mind, okay, what about people disguising themselves, or processors disguising themselves as authorized? So that's where we've also stepped up the game to ensure there is no way you can cheat the system by trying to say that I'm a Backup Exec process. So there is intelligence built into the solution to resist that kind of an approach and ensure the data or the backup image is protected no matter what. So this is essentially being able to build a ransomware resilient system. And in the unfortunate situation there's ransomware attack, you have a clean copy that you can leverage on to recover confidently and bring your systems up and running, and don't need to pay the ransomware to the attacker. And I already touched about two-factor authentication, so that's pretty straightforward. So people who log on to the Backup Exec console will be challenged in additional criteria to answer, and that's when they will be allowed access into the systems. We talked about GDPR, being able to find sensitive data. So I'm just going to skip to the next slide in terms of your virtual workloads. So from a virtual workload perspective, Hyper-V, VMware are quite popular. In fact, Nutanix is also something that's getting traction, especially in the hyper-converged infrastructure. So Nutanix is a platform that has storage, compute, and networking all hyper-converged into, and on top of it, you can sit something like Hyper-V or VMware to extend your virtualization structure. So today we are in a clear position to support that sort of a configuration, be able to extensively support that, and of course leverage on those features that I mentioned earlier, such as forever incremental, instant recovery capability, and of course do granular recovery. Something at the bottom that you see is recovery ready, which I want to touch a bit on that as well. So backing up virtual machines and storing it is one thing. Down 6 months down the road, you want to do some sort of recovery, and then when you click on restore, there could be a scenario where the recovery can fail, and that's going to be a very disastrous situation. So recovery ready is a feature on Backup Exec that immediately does a verification of the backup job to ensure that this virtual machine backed up is successful and can be restored in the future. Essentially, what it does is it does an instant recovery of the virtual machine onto a sandbox environment. It boots up the virtual machine. It tries to connect into the virtual machine through the virtual machine tools or the VSS tool. And if there's a heartbeat back to the backup console, it comes to a conclusion, the backup job is a success, and this backup image is clean and is recoverable in the future. So what we're trying to do is improve, or rather, build strong the confidence for our customer of the solution that we have in order to protect your backup virtual infrastructure. Next, in terms of cloud, right? So we spoke about cloud that's being utilized for either, primary workloads or as storage. So today we are able to support popular providers out there. We have about 40 plus providers who work with. So we cover the popular ones that are AWS, Google, Azure, in fact, people like Alibaba as well, who are also, catching up today. So what we do essentially is do inline deduplication. Whatever dedupe data on premises is continued to the cloud as well. So on the cloud, you don't unnecessarily burn your subscription monthly. You only utilize the resources that is essentially required. And then you save on bandwidth that is required to send data to the cloud also. And of course, if you have your infrastructure totally on cloud, something like Azure Compute or AWS EC2 instance, you have Backup Exec that is already on the respective marketplaces to deploy and then start protecting them from day one on the cloud platforms also. Next, we talk about SaaS workloads. I mentioned O365, some of the limitations that has in terms of data protection. So we cover all those check marks, making sure second copy is out there. There is a protection against ransomware. So most of the customers, we have spoken to, they say, Microsoft takes care of the data for me. They ensure the data is out there. Of course, there is a limitation to what they do, probably a 30-day recovery window or a 90-day recovery window, depending on the type of data. But that does not serve the purpose in terms of a long-term recovery. So if you come across the requirement maybe 1 year earlier or a few months before whatever is limited, you need to be able to go to that image and recover. So that's where we are really helping our customers using our SaaS backup solution to protect the SaaS workload, and of course integrate to Backup Exec to have a unified view totally. So this comes to the end of my session. Before I hand over to Luis, I just want to summarize how Backup Exec delivers in terms of reducing complexity and reducing your cost, how it delivers in terms of managing your risk, and of course, empowering you to be future ready, right? So here we go. We're basically there to help you to be protected, and of course, to have the confidence in terms of recovering in the future. So as a next step, I would like to urge those of you on this call who are not today tried Backup Exec or haven't tried Backup Exec, or you're probably on the older version of Backup Exec, please visit the following link, download a 60-day trial, try out the product, see how it helps you. If there's any challenges that you come across, feel free to reach out to your respective counterparts in CHAS or myself, and they will be there to help you out to overcome those challenges. Right. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Luis to share his contents with you guys. Luis, are you ready?
All right.
Okay, my friend, you're the presenter. Go ahead.
Okay. So can you all see my screen? Hello?
Yes, Luis, go ahead.
Okay, right. So morning everyone. My name is Luis. I'm the solution consultant from CHAS Asia Malaysia, and thanks for joining us on this webinar today. So in this presentation, I'll be sharing insights in regards to identity and what we can do to secure the identity on the cloud. And before I start, if you are tasking on your machine while joining this webinar, may I suggest to spare me about 10 minutes of your time on the slide. I guarantee it won't be too long, okay? So some security folks might have seen this triangle before, but for the rest, This CIA Triad is the fundamental to security. CIA Triad is a well-known model that we apply to identify security-related problem areas and to come up with countermeasures that addresses them. So the letter C in the CIA Triad is confidentiality. The word confidentiality focuses on the privacy of the data and information. So only authorized user can access or modify data. This often relates to the least privilege concept, where a person would be given just enough privilege to access the information they require and nothing more. In the I triad, it represents integrity. Integrity is prevention of data from being tampered with, and data should be maintained in a correct state and well protected against unauthorized or accidental modification by authorized person. And finally, the last piece to the CIA triad is availability. In security terms, availability is associated to constant availability, aka always accessible of resources by authorized people. In IT context, we always talk about 99.99 SLA or HA. So all these terms are actually referring to the availability in the CIA triad. A very good example of availability is what Mush has shared earlier on how we can leverage on Veritas solution to ensure that corporate data is always available regardless disaster or threats. So my topic today on securing identity will touch on these three pillars in the CIA triad as we go through the presentation slide. So here we have a typical IT environment with critical systems like your AD, your core business application, and also users which is sitting within the internal network. So as business requirements evolve, some company embark on digital transformation journey that adopts cloud technology to improve productivity and also streamline the business processes. Because the bad guys are always trying to come in, IT has rolled out common security solutions like AV, endpoint protection, ATP appliances, and some to the extent of two-tier firewall just to keep the attackers out. With the current COVID pandemic situation, we can see more and more companies that are forced in a way or more open to explore and adopt cloud solution, mainly for business continuity and keep the business operation going. So equipped with technology, employees started to work from home, and we see that this is going to be a new norm, or at least to stay for quite some time. The existing on-premise security investment thus become irrelevant as it is not able to protect the users that is outside of the office network. So in this situation, somehow it has turned to become an opportunity for the bad guys to actually infiltrate the security gaps. I personally do notice that there is a significant rise on phishing attacks in my customer's environment ever since Malaysia was put to a lockdown state, where people started to work from home. And from our observation, attackers are putting in more effort to craft a targeted attack that is hard to distinguish by normal users which aren't just alert enough, right? And the scariest part of this compromised identity is that IT would not know which account was compromised while the bad guys creeps from within and planning for the next attack. And because you're not the only company that is running a business, your customer can be a victim of phishing attack too. The bad guys can actually launch a crafted phishing attack through your customer that you thought you knew. So, the second possible cause of compromised identity is actually data breach on third-party or SaaS application. Through the breach, attacker can gain access to database and dumps the credential into a dictionary. They can use the dictionary to execute a combination of brute force attack and also a password spray against your company's system. So here we'll see an example of leaked credentials due to data breach. You can check out haveibeenpawned.com. So enter your email address and hit search. It will actually tell you if there's any compromised data related to the email ID affected by the worldwide data breach incident. Here, you can actually see that compromised data dump was widely available from multiple breach incidents that the attacker can actually take advantage of. Okay? So apart from Have I Been Pawned, there are also several undisclosed data breach incidents where the credential dumps are put onto sale on the dark web. So these are the things that we cannot see. So you might be thinking, what happened if your identity was compromised? Right? The bad guys can anytime log in as you to launch an internal phishing attack to other users within your organization. They can also impersonate you to phish your customer. So imagine if your customer or colleagues receive this malicious email from yours truly. Chances of them falling for it will be much higher because they thought, right, this is someone I actually knew. And if the attacker managed to compromise, say, an identity that belongs to a management or a director, they are able to access top secret or sensitive data and they can exfiltrate it undetected as the login is deemed verified. So if finance director or a user from the accounts receivable gets their identity compromised, the bad guys can actually issue something like the fraudulent payment instruction to the internal finance and also to your customer. So unsuspecting customer could end up paying to the fraud account instead of yours. Okay. Should the breach identity comes with sufficient admin privilege, the attacker can perform a DOS attack to cripple the IT infrastructure or to deploy a ransomware and further demand for payment. So in order to secure the user's identity on the cloud, we would recommend to use Azure Active Directory as the identity and access management solution. So not to confuse, Azure Active Directory does not work the same as on-premise AD, but I would say that both of them complement each other. So in a general idea to distinguish between the two is an on-premise AD supports a network-based authentication like Kerberos or NTLM, while Azure AD supports a web-based authentication, for example, OAuth or SAML. So to simplify the management of both AD and Azure AD, we can synchronize the user's identity from on-premise to Azure AD. And by replicating the users and password hash to Azure AD, the users will only need one set of credentials to access the company resources on-premise or in the cloud. So with Azure AD, IT can implement multi-factor authentication or 2FA that challenges the user identity when they are signing into the company's resources using Azure AD as the primary gate. MFA can be enforced to ensure that when users sign in, it is done together with a second factor, for example, a one-time password or an authenticated application like a security token or maybe your smartphone. So here I would like to share a quote from Alex Weiner, Director of Identity Security from Microsoft. So in his blog post, he says that your password doesn't matter, but MFA does. User account is more than 99.9% less likely to be compromised if you use MFA. So I kind of agree with him where, your password can be anything. Even though your password has been phished by the attackers, they will still need an MFA to complete the sign-in. So this actually brings us to another point on the company's password policies and also the best practices. Some company adopts long and complex password with strict policies, for example, 30 days of expiry and non-reusable. In a way, this actually forces the user to change the password and remember the new password itself can be a real challenge. The users end up writing a complicated password on a piece of sticky note, for example, on their PC or desk, which in a way defeats the purpose of a password security. Some of you might agree to disagree, but I think we can always leave this topic for another discussion. Right. So coming back to our topic, we can protect our users' identity with just a simple implementation of MFA and 2FA. So now let me share you another scenario regards to MFA. So imagine you are staying in a guarded apartment, and every time you enter the premise, you use your access card. So the access card will act like your username and password. So next, I would like you to visualize that there is a dedicated security guard stationed right in front of your main apartment door. This is actually good as when anyone tries to enter your apartment, they will be checked by the security guard. But one underlying problem that comes with this security guard is that he kind of has Alzheimer, for example. He could not remember anyone, including yourself as the house owner. So every time when you try to access or open up your house door, he will ask, who are you? Can you verify yourself? Right? Until one fine day, you actually find him annoying that he keep asking you to verify yourself when you're entering your own apartment. What a joke, right? So in MFA in general, it is actually like a security guard. Microsoft sees this as a problem, hence they have introduced conditional access. So based on certain condition, for example, the user's sign-in location, or the devices they use to sign in, or even the compliance status of the device, MFA can be triggered only under certain condition. So this, in a way, gets the security guard to recognize the person itself when they try to access the apartment. Okay, so I would like to further explain the features in terms of identity management on Azure AD. So Azure AD can be configured to perform a single sign-on to third-party or cloud application. So this ensures that the user identity and access to SaaS cloud application are well protected. So earlier we mentioned we can implement multi-factor authentication in a way to secure the user identity. So this actually applies to all the applications which is integrated to Azure Active Directory as well. So this is the last slide that I have on the deck. So to summarize on what I've shared, by securing the user identities, we can keep the access to companies' data away from bad actors' reach. We can ensure that no unauthorized person can modify company's data, and by no means that a phish credential can lead to infiltration and disruption to the system or application's availability. So, so I think that's the end of my slide. But just for your information, there are other security features from Azure AD that I did not touch on in this webinar today in the interest of time. So just to name a few, there is the Azure AD application where we use them to manage on-premise system or application access via Azure AD. There is also self-service password reset, the feature that allows users to reset their AD credential anywhere, any device. It could be their personal device with just an internet access. There is also Azure AD Identity Protection, which detects and remediates vulnerable, risky accounts. And lastly, there is a Privileged Identity Management, PIM. So how PIM works is every time when a user needs to perform a task that requires an elevated privilege, for example, the users would like to access the admin portal to update some user details or create a new users, or even deleting a user. So we can route this sign-in request to their manager for approval, so they can get access to the admin portal for a fixed period, say for an hour. So I think that is about it from my side. And we are actually open for Q&A session. The chat box is available for you to submit your question if you have any. So Leon, back over to you.
Yeah, so thanks for both of the presenter, thanks Ed and Luis. So yeah, welcome to the Q&A session. So feel free to post any question regarding the backup exec demand, and also any question on the how any other FMA MFA like implementation questions, and you can just post it on the chat. So we'll just wait for like a few maybe 1 or 2 minutes just to see if there's any questions from the attendees.
Leon, while we wait for questions, let me quickly post the last polling, and then we can follow up.
Yeah, sure. So the poll question is: would you like someone from Session or Veritas to follow up with you on either of the solutions? So feel free to input your inputs. We're waiting for people to reach out the flow questions or looking for any further questions. Is there any frequent questions that our customer or your customer always ask about? You can share with us, Mahadit and Louis.
So from my side, in order for a customer to adopt Azure Active Directory, the customer might not necessarily be existing Office 365 customer. So Azure Active Directory can serve as a platform itself that manages the identity. So of course, it complements well together securing Office 365 if they are on.
Thank you, Louis. So for Mahadit, do you have anything you want to re-emphasize on?
Yes, so I have a question. I have actually two questions. Let me just bring them up. Give me a moment, please. Okay, so question number one is what happens when the user machine already got corrupted in the next backup schedule? Will it cause corruption of the good data already backed up? Well, the answer is no, because there's going to be versioning that's happening in the backup infrastructure. So when you have the clean data that was already backed up before the corruption happened, that's going to be there with us up until the retention expires. And then, of course, you are able to clean up your infected data as well using the command line. So you can reclaim the storage. Hope that answers the question. I have another question that says, I have previous version of BE, so if purchasing things, will it impact on the previous backup? Meaning, can I still use the same backup database? Okay, so yes, I mean, you can look at it two ways. If you're going to buy new BE licenses and then you're going to run it as a separate setup, completely different to what you already have, of course, it's a no problem. If you're going to add it to the existing infrastructure, only thing is you need to upgrade to the newer versions of Backup Exec. I'm not sure what are the agents that you're running. I'm not sure what are the operating systems that you're running. If they are old operating systems, something like Windows 2003 and stuff like that, those are something that you probably might need to look out for. Happy to help you out. Maybe you can send us an email. Leon will flash out our contact details later, and then you can.
There's also a new question. So he wanted to know for Veritas Backup, does it also covers like backing up historical data for like sign-in activity in AAD?
Right. So this is no, we don't support backing up infrastructure that's on Azure AD, meaning these are Azure or rather what do you say, Microsoft infrastructure related databases. So this is not something that we would be covering into because this is not available for the tenant itself. This is more of a Microsoft operation.
Okay, so I think I take that question. Right.
Maybe
in terms of tracking identity activities in Azure Active Directory and also historical data for sign-in activities in Azure AD. So what we can do is actually to integrate Azure AD to some platform, for example, Azure Sentinel, a SIEM that actually keeps a log or stores whatever sign-in activities based on it will pump all the data from Azure AD into the repository, and from there we can actually build a dashboard and automate it. For example, if there is a detection of fishy sign-in users activities, right? So the automation part will come into, for example, it will automatically block the user's access or reset the password or disable the account, right? So that will be covered under a different solution under Azure. Okay.
I hope that answer your question. So I think we have come to the end of the webinar. So any further questions or inquiry, you're feel free to
I think
approach.
Sorry, Leon, a question there. Can you repeat the same name for the solution you mentioned again? Luis?
Oh, so the solution is actually Azure Active Directory. So Azure AD comes in a few kind of flavors. The one with the features that I mentioned earlier is actually under the premium, whether it's a P1 or a P2. Okay.
All right. So yeah. Any further questions? All this we can actually y'all can send an email to us at inquiry@chessasia.com, or you can approach any of our or your AMs in Chessasia, so and then we will follow back up with you guys. So anything else from the panelists? Nothing, then we will end the session.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe. Take care.
Stay safe, guys.
Thank you, everyone.